This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill. Big interview today. We interviewed Rod Khleif. Rod is a legend in the real estate world. He is a podcast host and author, has his own real estate school. Bill, what did you think about today's interview?
It was great. We knew Rod coming in. Well, we didn't know him personally, but we knew what type of player he is in the multifamily world. And now Rod has a lot to say. He's got a huge body of work. One question I didn't even dive into when he owned 800 single family homes in the 2008 recession is, how do you own 800 single family homes? How do you get to that point, first of all?
How does one buy 800 single family homes? This is a great question because it's hard to leverage single family homes like you often do with multifamily. He had a great story of losing $50 million in the '08 crash and the mentality that it took to get up from that, get to another level to where he is now and rebuild his career, rebuild his businesses. He said that losing money is just going through a seminar and you have to learn from your mistakes. A lot of great points on psychology. And he had some, I'll say, scary predictions of what we're heading into in the near future. What do you think about that?
I found that surprising, and I shouldn't. Everybody has their opinion. Everybody has their perspective. And as far as Rod goes, he lost everything in 2008. So if you really explore it just a bit, I guess it's very understandable that he doesn't have a great outlook in 6 months or a year from now.
Absolutely. When you've gone through an event like that, it has to stay in the front of your mind with all of your business decisions moving forward. And it creates this conservative nature, which can be a great thing as long as you're not in a position where you need to scale. If you're at that point in your career, you can be conservative. It can work out really well. Unfortunately, my internet cut out partway through this episode, so I was only around for about the beginning third of it. I was actually still in the studio, and Bill and Rod couldn't hear me. I tried to speak up a couple times, and I thought they were just ignoring me. Turns out they couldn't see or hear me. Bill and I also recorded a 100th episode today. I believe this will be the 97th, so we'll go into a lot of detail on our personal real estate updates in that episode. Stick around for that one. Thank you for listening to the show. We are also on YouTube. If you like the show, give us a review. Tell us what you like about it. Tell us where we can improve. You can give us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe. Also subscribe on Spotify. And again, thank you for listening. Rod Khleif, thank you for being here today on the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I feel like an intro is almost not even needed here. Rod is a podcast host, an author, and has his own real estate investing school. Rod, how'd you get into real estate investing?
Well, I'm going to take you way back. So I'm an immigrant. I was born in the Netherlands, think wooden shoes and windmills, and immigrated when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert, my mother's Vansha, ended up in Denver, Colorado. Really struggled initially. I remember drinking powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. Eating expired food. We shopped at an expired food store. Really had one of those back then. Wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till finally I got disgusted and lied about my age at Burger King so I could flip burgers and buy my own clothes. And and I'm sure you've got listeners had it harder than I did, or maybe even have it harder now. But I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And with her babysitting money, we always had a house full of kids, but with her babysitting money, she was an entrepreneur. So she invested in the stock market successfully in IPOs, but she also invested in real estate. So her first real estate acquisition was the house directly across the street from us when I was 14. When I was 17, she told me she'd made $30,000 in her sleep, that it had gone up in value that much. I'm like, what? you made 30 grand and you haven't, I'm sorry, it was 20, forgive me, it was 20 grand. I said, you made 20 grand and you didn't do anything? Screw college, I'm getting into real estate. So I went and got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18. I was actually a broker. I could have my own office. Back then you could do that with education. Now they got smart and you need some experience to be a broker. So I got into real estate. Well, my first year in real estate, I made about 8 grand. My second year, maybe 10 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent money. So what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I actually was smart enough to go work for a broker, and I was dating his daughter. And he taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, how 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical information we talk about on our podcast. And, fast forward to today, I've owned 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term. I own thousands of apartment units. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so big I could barely fit it through a freaking door. I thought I was a real estate god. And you know when that happens, God of the universe will give you a nice little smack. Well, that was 2008 and 9. I lost everything in 2008 and 9. I lost $50 million conservatively. And so, if on my podcast, if you ever listen to my podcast, people that do know that, I enjoy talking about mindset and psychology a lot because obviously, it took that to recover from losing everything, and a lot of people don't recover from losing that kind of money. Hell, people killed themselves in the Great Depression and this recent one for losing less proportionally. So, so there you have it. That's how I got in real estate.
It's great to have you, Rod. I appreciate that background. That's an amazing journey. I remember, I grew up in a middle-class family, but I remember that powdered milk also.
Nasty.
And boy,
Nasty.
That was horrible. I also remember that my mom liked to buy the tough skin jeans, which I would not wear. I had to have Levi's. And I also became a broker way too early. Early in my investing career, after buying, I believe, 3 buildings, I had enough qualifying points based on the apartments that I rented that I could take my salesperson license and 2 weeks later take my broker's license, and off I went, started my own real estate firm. And boy, did I wish that I went to a franchise and learned the franchise way of doing things so I could put that into my business model. But hey, we all do the Monday morning quarterback thing. And here we are. We all learn from our experiences. Knowing that you took a lot of pain off that 2006, 2008 recession. I'm not sure if we're in a recession right now or not, but what do you see different now than what you saw in 2006 and 2008?
Well, I feel like the market's been frothing. I'll be honest, the last year has felt like 2006 and 7 to me. Okay. And I think we're heading into a depression. Love him or hate him, Trump just was quoted as saying, we're going to have a depression, not a recession. And, of course, Kiyosaki's been talking about it for 10 years. Now, of course, that's their shtick. Eventually they're going to be right. But I have to tell you, even people like Elon and Warren have said it's going to be something to be reckoned with here. And so, I think we're absolutely headed for some pain. Now, I don't look at it as pain. I look at it as opportunity. I was hiding under a rock in 2008 and 9 because, I thought I was set for life. So, I didn't capitalize on it. If I had, I'd be on the back of my yacht right now. No question. Incredible money was made in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. In fact, if you listen to my podcast, I interview, some of the best operators on the planet, thousands and thousands of doors. Some of them have as many as 20,000 doors. One guy, 100,000 doors, and tons of them with 5,000 to 7,000 doors. And you start to hear a pattern. Most of them started in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. That's what we call a clue, right? And so, I think that we're going to have a reckoning here in multifamily. Warren Buffett's famous quote, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. There's been a lot of greed the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of deals where operators have gotten bridge debt to get the higher loan to values, to make the returns work. And even if they had a rate cap, a 2% rate cap, 2% on a large asset increase in interest rate is a big deal. Okay. And we've seen that. And so, I'm seeing deals come back on the market that we looked at a year ago, that were purchased and are back on the market already, because I think there's pain already. And I think it's going to get worse. Or better, however you want to position it. But, no, and now it's a different environment. Obviously, back in 2006, if you could fog a mirror, you could buy a house. Okay. Well, that's not the case. And they were slicing and dicing those mortgages and committing all sorts of fraud in Wall Street to put out these different loan products for houses. Well, that's all gone now. Buying a house is much different now. It's much harder now. And of course there's a major gap now for home ownership because it's so much harder to buy a home. And so, I think we're still going to have a housing situation where people need a place to live and there's a shortage of housing. But I just saw an article on Fox like last week, really in the last few days, where it said half of the U.S. companies that they surveyed were planning layoffs, like in the next 30 days. So it was a pretty significant, sobering headline. So again, I wish I had that crystal ball, Bill, but I'm in a lot of cash. I just had 850 people at a 3-day boot camp in Denver 3 weeks ago. And we spent a lot of time talking about pre-framing investors right now, letting them know to not be fearful as things get ugly. Because I think after the midterms, we're going to start seeing some real crap on the news. It hasn't gotten ugly yet, but I think that's when, there'll be talk about how real estate's terrible. Like in 08, 09, it was like, real estate's terrible. It won't come back for 10 years, and I'm sure multifamily, heck, rents exceeded pre-crash levels in less than 3 years in 2008 and 9. And so, but we'll start to see that. And so moving into this period, mindset's more important than ever. Let me just say that. And of course, if you're watching Bill and Stephen here, you're a leader, and right now the world needs leaders. And so, in that vein, very important that you pay attention to what you're focused on. And if you're focused on the crap they put out on the news, whatever you focus on gets bigger, both positive or negative. So stand guard at the door to your mind and don't bring in the bad stuff, focus on the good stuff. I do these clips every week on my podcast called Own Your Power. They're motivational clips. They're 5 minutes. You give me 5 minutes a week, I will juice you. There's music to them. I'm very proud of them. There's hundreds of them there. And obviously they're well received because we just broke 14 million downloads on my podcast. But regardless, whether you listen to me or not, go to YouTube. I mean, I cry like a baby watching soldiers come home, or these motivational clips, so bring that stuff in. So very important, especially as things start to get ugly, because, if you're focused on what you want, you don't get caught up in all that noise, you'll be able to capitalize on it because there's going to be incredible opportunity.
A lot of great stuff there. We can get deeper into the mindset because you're certainly an expert. I really appreciate your perspective on where we're headed overall as an economy. And it's difficult because there's so many factors going into, that upcoming economic cycle where we go. And we're all looking at it from a real estate perspective because that's what we do every single day. I spoke with someone today who was saying that, by the spring, we're going to be out of whatever downturn we're in. And they're so optimistic. And then you had this conversation later where we're just getting started and we're going into a depression. So everyone has their own take on it. And I think that mindset is the way to be prepared for whatever that outcome is. I want to ask you, Rod, what are you doing differently this time? Because you'd built up a real estate portfolio. You had lost a significant amount of it during that first crash. You see an upcoming crash. You're saying, okay, you lost all of it. You're saying you're seeing a bigger crash this time. You're seeing a depression coming. What are you doing differently this time to prepare for that?
Well, listen, first of all, my kids love to tell me, are you tired of being wrong? Okay. Cause I'm wrong all the time. So let me pre-frame that. Okay. And in fact, I did a video on YouTube, it's the highest watched video ever, that I did, the coming real estate crash of 2021. Okay. And I got so much hate, like you're an idiot, whatnot. I thought COVID was going to be the catalyst. And of course it wasn't. But let me just say this. A lot smarter people than me think it's coming. Okay. And like I said, love him or hate him, Trump is pretty smart economically. But even, when, of course, again, Kiyosaki's been saying it forever, but some of what they say has a lot of merit. And I don't believe that these interest rate increases are going to slow down inflation as fast as they think it's going to, because that's not what caused it. It's all the money they're freaking printing. And we won't go political, but they just printed another, what is it? They claiming it's 300 billion in student loan relief today. And they anticipate the cost to be a trillion for that relief. Don't get me started on that. But the point is that printing that money is what created this inflation. And I just read as well that they have to print more money just to pay the interest on the international debt that this country owes. I mean, it's just like, it's some scary stuff, guys. And so, and as far as interest rates, Bill, you've been around a while. When I started in real estate, interest rates were 18%. I mean, I remember doing backflips when they hit 7%. Okay. So, these higher interest rates are coming. It's already impacted real estate. I mean, new housing starts have slowed to a crawl in a lot of the country. Sales have slowed way down. Hell, we were in best and final on a $44 million deal here in Sarasota, and we offered 38, okay? And they claimed that it sold for 44. Well, they circled back, of course, 3 weeks later and said, hey, how is that 38 still applicable? And we're like, no. So, we're seeing, I host the largest multifamily mastermind, I believe, in the country. There's about 16 billion in assets in it. We met in Houston about 8 weeks ago. And at that time, everybody there was retrading deals in the 10 to 12% reduction range. So, I mean, again, it's already impacted real estate. How tough is it going to get? I don't know. I think, like I said before, I think the bridge debt is going to create a lot of problems for a lot of people, because that was like the belle of the ball this last year. I don't know if you guys were acquiring, but, dangerous debt, adjustable rate, short term, 3 years, maybe 5 if you got 2 1-year extensions. And, here's the definition of a bad day: having a cash flowing asset. And cap rates follow interest rate increases, guy. I'm sure you guys know this. If you look at a graph from 2008 and 9, it's like a bubble for the cap rates and a bubble for the interest rates. A definition of a bad day is having a beautiful cash flowing asset and not getting and needing to refinance and having the loan come due, like an ARM adjustable rate, or even a term on a normal loan, and not having the value you need to be able to refinance or sell. And so I think we're going to see some of that. And again, in my view, that's opportunity. So did I answer your question? I kind of went off on a tangent there.
What are you doing differently with your own portfolio?
Oh, okay. I'm in a lot of cash right now. We are being very conservative. I have an asset under contract right now in Nashville for 33 million, 145 doors, beautiful asset. I mean, beautiful asset. We're getting 60% loan to value debt on it. Okay. A fixed rate, 10-year debt, 5 years interest only, Freddie Mac debt. I mean, incredibly conservative debt, 60%. We're putting 6 months operating reserves in the bank, just in case what hits the fan fund, right? And of course we stress test the hell out of the deal. We have a very conservative exit cap calculation. You do it a percent a year, and we're at I think 20 or 25 basis points a year for that. So, those are some of the things we're doing differently. We're being much more conservative, and even that deal with that kind of debt and the operating reserves and everything else, we're at 8 to 10% cash on cash, 16 to 19% IRR, and 20 to 22% AAR. I mean, so fantastic returns projected, and they're conservative. I'm going to tell you that right now, they're conservative. I'm all about under promising and over delivering, but so that's what we're doing differently. In the last year, I've only bought one other asset. Okay, a 296 unit asset in San Antonio, screaming deal, broke even day one. I mean, the break even on day one was 59% economically occupied. That's how conservative that deal was, and it's been a screaming deal. So, we've been in best and final a few dozen times this last year, only to scratch our head when we see what some of these assets have traded for. And so, again, we're like, how do they get the returns? Well, how'd they get them? They put on high loan to value bridge debt, very dangerous debt. And I think there's going to, besides just these debt issues, I think there's going to be an asset management issue, because a lot of these operators have not been through a downturn. And boy, you better have your what together asset management wise in a downturn. You better be on top of every metric, every KPI on a weekly basis, making sure your tenants love you, that you're following up on maintenance, that you're not losing people. All of that stuff is going to be critical in what's coming. So again, I think that could create some issues as well. So that answer your question, bud?
Absolutely.
No, that's a great answer. And I agree with you on that bridge debt. Everybody's gotten so spoiled over the last 5 or 10 years. You're able to just throw a dart at a dartboard and you're going to be successful. And people who haven't experienced a little bit or a lot of pain, they just haven't experienced it yet. And it's different when you felt it and saw it. And yes, I agree with you. Once some of that bridge money comes due, a lot of people are going to be left exposed. I'm staring at the terms of that deal you did in Nashville, 60% loan to value, so you're very well protected there. Did you mention it's a 10-year amortization on that
No,
loan?
it's 30-year
Are you syndicating that, or is that a joint venture?
No, it's 30-year amortization. Okay, but it's
sorry.
a 10-year term. As you know, all commercial debt has a term. You can't get fully amortized unless, except for HUD. So it's a 10-year term. But to see, a lot of people are doing 5-year terms. I mean, that to me is just naive, because if this thing, it really is ugly and it stays with us for a while. Again, I told you the definition of a bad day. So I think short-term debt's very dangerous. This bridge debt, it would be a fitting example. But there are even people doing bank debt right now, 5-year term without an automatic renewal, rate adjustment renewal provision. And so, to me, that's dangerous right now. I'm super conservative. So please recognize all the feedback you're going to get from me. I'm dragging around that bag of history that I went through in 2008, 2009. So I'm way conservative, much more than most. But even if I'm halfway right, there's going to be some opportunity. And I mean, some people are saying it could be the greatest transfer of wealth in history. And so let me say this. If you're listening or watching this and you're thinking multifamily is going to be your vehicle, you need to get up to speed right now. Don't wait. Okay? Because if we're in the thick of it and you're trying to learn, it's going to be too late. You need to build relationships. You need to, learn the business. Okay. So I've got a virtual boot camp coming up. It's 2 days. You can come for $97 and I don't sell anything there. So kind of a no-brainer if you're interested in this business. 16 to 18 hours of training about every aspect of this business, nothing being sold, and you can come for $97. So the price will go up to $400. So let me give you the how to find out about it. It's multifamilybootcamp.com, multifamilybootcamp.com, or you can text, if you're driving, text my name, Rod, to 72345. So text Rod to 72345, or go to multifamilybootcamp.com. And if the price has gone up, just DM me and say you heard me, on collecting real estate, and I'll give you a code so you can still get that $97 price. Because like I said, it'll go up to about $400. But anyway, the point is, I don't care if you learn from me, but if multifamily is going to be your vehicle, that's a great opportunity. It's October 15th and 16th, but get up to speed right away. If you're going to buy businesses, you're going to do single family, learn it right now, because you want to be able to capitalize on this. You want to conserve cash. Like my wife and I are really conserving cash right now. We're pre-framing our investors. Hey, we're getting ready. Don't be scared. When the news starts talking about how crappy everything is, don't get sucked into that, because there's going to be great opportunity. And so all of that pre-framing we're doing as well to get ready for what's coming. So
I've always bought conservatively through my career. I think buying conservatively didn't allow me to grow super aggressively, but I always did well on every asset I ever purchased because it had to be a great deal. At this point of the market, I operate that same way, but I'll be happy to pay market value as long as I see that massive rent growth potential, being in that environment where rent growth has just gone so crazy. So I feel like I'm minimizing a lot of risk if I'm buying that asset where we're able to get 50, 60% rent growth over a 2 or 3 year period.
But do you really think that that's going to continue over the next few years? That's my concern.
I know that the aggressive rent growth it's not going to be sustainable the way that it has grown.
No way.
But if you have a building that you're interested in selling and the rents are $500 and the market is 1,000, it's not like you need to, they're way under market. So just to get them to the current market, you've got massive rent growth there. I don't think that after stabilization, you can count on continued massive rent growth. But when you're buying something where the current owner just has not nearly kept up with the market rents, that makes me comfortable.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. When you said you were buying at market, it made me. But I'm glad you explained it further. In your description, I don't disagree at all. I mean, if it's like this Nashville asset, the rents are they're probably 700 to 800 below market. I mean, that's because we got a lot of 3 bedrooms, and it's just there's some great opportunity. Now we have to do some CapEx to get to get that bump, significant CapEx actually, but still when you compare that to the rent increases we're going to likely see, there's no comparison. Now, the thing that I don't think is going to happen is that we're going to continue to see these big rent increases as this economy slows down for a whole lot of reasons. I mean, not the least of which would be the economy slowing down, but I think we're going to see some flatlining here at some point. And I know in our analysis, we only, did 2 to 3% on an ongoing basis after our initial bump from our CapEx and our value add. So, yeah.
And I agree with you there. So after you do get those rents up to fair market, yes, 2 or 3% thereafter makes a lot of sense, especially when you're conservatively underwriting, knowing if a recession comes or a depression comes, hopefully not, then you gave yourself some room where rents don't grow at all, or they may back up a little bit. Yeah. So that conservative purchasing, yeah. So you mentioned pre-framing your investors. Are you basically explaining it to them in the same way where, yes, there's opportunity, but are you saying don't buy now?
No, good question. Good question. No, I get that question a lot, actually. Should I wait to buy? No, it's already opening up. Like I said, we've only bought one asset since September of 2021. This is the second asset, which again, I told you the numbers, they're fantastic to have double-digit returns on every level. It would have that low loan to value. I mean, we're raising $18 million on a $33 million deal, and to still have those kinds of returns, is really, and we're very conservative. We're showing 25% vacant year 1, 17% vacant year 2 from our rent increases. Okay, so it's not, we're very, very conservative. But do I think there could be some exponential opportunity? Absolutely. Even if it's just a recession, Bill, because of the bridge debt dynamic that I was just talking about. If it's not as bad as we all think. But, when 50% of the companies in the country that are surveyed say they're going to be laying people off, that's pretty onerous, so we'll see. But, just as an FYI, when I lost everything in 2008 and 9, I was only at a 30% loan to value. Okay. And I still crashed and burned. So it was a very conservative position that I was in, just so you know. And I'm happy to kind of describe what happened if you'd like.
That'd be great. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I think because most people haven't had the journey that we've had. I've been doing this almost 30 years. You've been doing it quite so long. And the journey is super, super valuable. And I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit more detail
and what it was I wasn't that focused on cash flow, which was a big mistake. I wrote a #1 best-selling book called How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties. I still give it away for free. In fact, if you want it, you pay the shipping. It's like $6 or $7, but you go to rodslinks.com. rodslinks.com, and that's got the bootcamp site there as well. But in there are some free books and also this book. But the reason I bring that up is the subtitle of that book is The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, i.e., and then this was written, 7 years ago, the new rules being focus on freaking cash flow. Cash flow is everything. I don't care if you can buy a property that sold for $10 million 3 years ago for 5 million. What's the cash flow? Okay, that's the number one barometer, especially in what's coming. But here's the thing. Back in 2007, 6 and 7, I had 800 houses all up and down the Gulf Coast of Florida, 2 hours one direction, 2 hours the other direction, everywhere in between. And I had several apartment complexes. It was the houses that pulled me down. And here's why. These were C-class houses, okay? So a lot more maintenance. They're older, tougher demographic. They're harder on the asset. And in Florida, there's no state income tax, so property taxes are higher. I had properties in wind and flood zones, so insurance was higher. Both impact cash flow. But here's what killed me. If I had a maintenance issue at one of my apartment complexes, everything's the same. So plumbing parts, electrical parts, HVAC parts, door locks, windows, you can stockpile parts and they're in and out in an hour. Okay. Well, if I just send a maintenance guy to one of my houses that's an hour away one way, they have to go see what's wrong. Every house is different. Then they have to go find a Home Depot or a Lowe's where we have an account. And I don't know about you, Bill, but when Rod tries to fix something, he ends up going to Home Depot more than once. And it's the same way with maintenance guys. And so what took an hour at one of my apartment complexes took all day at one of my 800 houses. So I didn't really cash flow that well, even at a 30% loan to value. But then the coup de grace, as it were, was, I didn't pay attention to tenant demographics back then. If they had a good job and decent credit and they paid a deposit, I let them rent. Well, what I discovered afterwards was a lot of them were jobbers, contractors, plumbers, electricians, drywallers, painters, roofers, and that fell off a freaking cliff in 2009. Nobody had work, so they couldn't pay the rent. And so, now I can tell you, I looked at where every single resident at that Nashville asset works just to see how recession resistant their employment was. Okay. That's the level I take it now. And so, but I didn't back then, but and here's what's crazy, Bill. I was at a 30% loan to value. By the end of 2009, my portfolio was upside down. That's how much it dropped. It dropped more than 70%. So crazy. Yeah. So anyway, but, people are like, I talk about this publicly and people are like, oh, you were over leveraged. No, I was not over leveraged at all. So anyway.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting because that's what the common person would say is based on what had happened with the banking crisis. They were just lending way too much money. So that's the easy reaction where you're saying that you only had 30% loan to value and it still bit you. Coming off of that recession 12, 13 years ago, you owned 800 single family houses. And you mentioned just to do maintenance, it costs so much because we're doing that runaround. Is that where, when you got back in, getting those economies of scale, buying larger multifamily?
Well, I started my podcast, I don't know, 6.5 years ago. And I used to tell people, it's kind of funny as an aside, if you listen to my first few episodes, I tell people, I'm never going to sell you anything. I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to add value. And that was the truth. I just wanted to add value. And so now I'm a liar because I have, courses and coaching and boot camps and everything else, but I never intended to, you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. Right. But once I hit 1 million downloads, I'm like, okay, stupid, you probably ought to do something with this. So I wrote that book, gave away 20,000 copies of the PDF for free. And now I give the physical copy away for free. And then I started doing course. And like I said, 850 people 3 weeks ago in Denver for a 3-day boot camp. And I'll have hundreds of people at this virtual one coming up, that you can come if you like.
Well, I was asking you about coming off those 800 single family.
Oh, yeah. So why multifamily? Recession? Well, here's the reason. My multifamily did just fine in the crash. If I hadn't cross-collateralized, thought I was brilliant, saving 50 basis points, 0.5% interest by refinancing my apartment complexes with packages of houses with local banks. If I hadn't done that, I still own those apartment complexes. They pulled back about, 10, 11%, but I could have easily survived. It was the houses that pulled me down. And so that's why I started the podcast, was to put that message out there for two reasons. I started the podcast. One is to tell people, if you're going to buy and hold, for God's sakes, do multifamily, don't do single family. It's for a whole lot of reasons. Easier to scale, safer, on and on and on. But then the other reason is I hate asking for money, and I knew I was going to get back into commercial real estate. And so I thought, what a great vehicle to add value. And then if I mention a deal, which like the Nashville deal, we're already like a third raised in 2 or 3 days, just from mentioning it on the podcast. So, it's definitely done all that. But But anyway, and then it took off, and now, like I say, 14 million downloads. It's become pretty consuming, and I love it. I mean, I didn't think I would love it, but I absolutely freaking love it. So.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So it looks like that Nashville deal, based on you advertising on your podcast, that must be a
Yeah. Oh, of
506c
course. Yeah,
investment.
that's all you can do. If you guys don't know what that means I can only let accredited investors participate in that deal. And back in the day when I first started, they didn't have that. The Dodd-Frank Act brought that around. I mean, back in the day, you had that 3-touch rule. You couldn't talk to somebody about a specific deal unless you talked to them 3 times previously. You could do it on the 3rd time. Now you have to have a substantive understanding of somebody's financial background to be able to uh, um, bring them a deal in a 506B scenario. And this is, by the way, this is the kind of stuff I teach at the boot camp. We have a syndication attorney do this part of the training. Yeah, so yes, it's a 506C for sure.
Okay, getting back to those most recent purchases, it looks like you definitely got a bit cautious since COVID, knowing
Well, it
that
wasn't because of
you have
COVID. It
made
wasn't because of COVID. No, it was because I saw the writing on the wall. I mean, this time I really had my eye on the ball as it relates to multifamily. I don't really pay attention to single family that much anymore, but I saw this bridge debt dynamic, and we refused to do it. I even had I was a partner in some deals from an old partner that did some bridge debt, and I think we're okay there. But my current partner and I, in the last year, didn't do any, just conforming that deal in San Antonio.
well, the bridge debt, it's fantastic in a hot market that's just rising, rising, rising. It's a home run type financing technique, without a
But it's
doubt.
there to
But
bridge the gap between a non-performing asset and a performing asset. Okay, that's what it was put in place for. People were using it though to get the higher loan to values because Fannie and Freddie had dropped their loan to value. Okay, they know what they're doing. Okay. And so, that's a clue, right? When they're not going to loan more than a certain loan to value, you need to pay attention to that because they see the writing on the wall. They're much, they've been around a long time through many market cycles. But bridge lenders were going ahead and doing it anyway. And I'm going to tell you, I think a lot of bridge lenders are going to end up with assets. There's a lot of nefarious bridge lending going on as well. I have a student that was approved for a bridge loan. This is, probably a year and a half ago, approved for a bridge loan. 2 days before closing, the bridge lender pulled out. Guess who bought the property? The bridge lender. Now they settled and he made money, but so it's some of these bridge lenders, not the big ones, of course, they're big national ones, but some of them are pretty nefarious. I mean, it's like the wild, wild west. So, you need to be careful in that regard as well.
yeah, knowing that you purchased in Nashville, which is a fantastic market, and so many people love Texas and that San Antonio market as well. Are you really focusing on that quality location, quality asset, and specific geographical locations?
Yeah, good question. Let me tell you where we have assets. So we've got several assets in Dallas, of course, San Antonio, Houston, Atlanta. Ohio, we've got assets in Cincinnati and a wealthy suburb of Dayton, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, now this Nashville asset. So I like Southeast, but I have gone into Ohio. I like Ohio as well. So, I will tell you, we're not going to do any C minus assets right now. It's going to be just B. Why? Because what demographics getting killed right now with what's going on with the inflation and gas prices? It's the demographic that's in the C assets. They're dying. I mean, and so we're definitely going to see some pain there. And so, I want a B minus asset, maybe a C plus if we can bring it up to a B, but just really want to be careful because I think in what's coming, it's going to be those, C and D properties that are really going to suffer because of what's happening with inflation. And again, mind numbing that they doing another 300 billion for student debt. Yeah. My daughter worked her ass off to not have any student debt, and we're going to be paying for other people's student debt. Don't get me started.
Yeah, that blows my mind too. I've been shaking my head since 2010 when we were printing an amazing amount of money back then. I find it amazing that it didn't catch up to us until now. But they just did so much during COVID.
Crazy.
It just we can't
No.
be surprised that
Well,
we're
that's
dealing with
that's
this
why I
type of an
think people think it's
inflation.
going to be much harder and more painful than a lot of the pie in the sky operators are saying right now. Because I will tell you, at my mastermind, I was the bearish one there. A lot of the operators were saying that same thing. Oh, it's going to just be a blip by February, March next year. It'll be fine. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think so. I think it's going to get pretty darn ugly. So we'll see.
So as you're underwriting assets these days, obviously you're looking for something high quality, great location, which you just mentioned, a lot of hot markets. And now we're
Mhm.
underwriting. So big line items on that underwriting right now, which creates some uncertainty. You have the interest
Mhm.
rate, which you get what you
Mhm.
get now. But if you are planning on, doing any type of a
Mhm.
refi,
Supplemental.
I'm
Mhm.
curious on how you're underwriting an interest rate in 3 or 5
Well,
years.
we're going up.
And ultimately, what are you underwriting your cap
Yeah.
rates
Well,
at in three
as
or
I
five
said,
years?
20 to 25 basis points per year increase. So, and that's pretty conservative, honestly. But who knows? I mean, to do more than that, you're not gonna be able to buy anything. So, but we were doing 10% for a long time, but that's all changed based on this environment that we're in. And yeah, so being very conservative right now, and it's painful sometimes when we see other people still overpaying. We just looked at an asset in South Carolina, and we're at about 38. No, where are we at? We're at 30. Yeah, oh, I got the no. We look at so many deals, I lost track. We're about 5 million off, and we're like, hard to believe that's the case, but you know. You can make a deal look good as well. By the way, if you're listening, depending on when this episode airs, we may still have some room in that Nashville asset. If you text the word partner to 72345, you could take a look at it and see if you have an interest. But again, you have to be accredited if you do that. But I mean, we become more and more conservative every few weeks here as this thing progresses. This recent interest rate increase. We're trying to pay attention to what's happening with the CRE debt, and it's been crazy debt markets. I mean, I had an asset under contract in Arkansas, and we backed out of it. I lost 50 grand is all. Thank God that was all. But we walked, and just because the debt was ridiculous, it was an $8 million purchase, and I was going to have to raise $5 million for an $8 million purchase. I'm like, no, that's just
Wow,
stupid.
jeez,
Yeah,
almost want to
right.
buy cash. And with that said, with raising money and syndications based on how things have gotten a little bit different over the past 6 months, are you seeing passive investors'
Oh yeah.
appetite
Slow
tighten
down. No,
up?
there's
Or
fear, buddy.
yeah,
There's fear. They're like, oh, I'm gonna hold on. Well, I mean, I'm holding on too, but it's killing me because my cash is just going down. I can watch it go down in value. It's killing me. But in a crisis, cash is king, and so everything's going on sale, Bill. Everything. Okay, so cash is king, or access to cash is king, and that's why I like say pre-frame investors. But no, it's taking a lot more hand holding now than it was in the past. We'd probably be fully subscribed on that deal, literally, a few days in, if it weren't the climate that we're in. And I heard this from operators at my mastermind as well. That's becoming, and I believe that's going to be the challenge moving forward. It was finding deals up to this point. It's going to be finding money after this point. It's just flipping. So, but the nice thing is it's getting a little bit back to normal. You might be able to do a deal and not have to go hard day one, and actually have some due diligence and like it was, wouldn't that be something? So,
yeah, going hard money. Geez, that never
right.
excited me. I still haven't
Yeah.
done that, and that's kept me away from
Right.
getting into certain deals because I'm not big on going hard when I haven't done my proper due diligence yet. I also appreciate, I've been dealing with what's that sweet spot. So I'm sitting on some cash and in a high inflationary period, and I know I'm losing money on the cash, and going into this type of inflationary economy, it's wise to put it in hard
Sure.
assets, but you want to stay liquid. So I guess we all have our own
Sure.
comfort zone on what that sweet spot
Yeah.
is of you
No,
have
that
to
was well
keep some
said. That was well
liquidity,
said. I
but
struggle with that exact same dynamic myself.
And I think most of us do that are in our situations. Getting into where you've provided so much massive value, and you mentioned that you hadn't planned on
Right.
selling anything, but what we've all learned also is when you create so much value for people, you've created
Well,
raving
I mean, look behind
fans
me. You
that
can't, some of you listening can't see this, but there's some of the hundreds of thank you cards from people. I've only been teaching, less than 5 years. My students own, I think, somewhere in the 75,000 to 90,000 unit range that we know of. And I'm really proud of
wow,
that. I'm super proud of
awesome.
that. But I mean, we've changed a lot of lives, made a lot of millionaires, and it's why my wife puts up with me working Sundays and stuff, because I freaking love this. I mean, when I tell you that I get love every single day, I mean, I get DMs, emails, cards, gifts. It's a blessing, and I'm sure you guys get some great feedback as well. Anytime you add value, like you guys are doing as well, it comes back to you, and that's the way God or the universe works. Whatever you give, you get back. So, it's just again, I didn't think I would love it as much as I do, but I do. So thought I would teach.
No, and I agree with you. I don't have the amount of units that you have or that school that you have, but me and Stephen do our thing in the capital region of New York, and we have our thought platforms, and I have that passion to help people, beginning moderate investors, as much as I can based on where I've had some
Mhm.
success and where I've had my
I call them
failures.
seminars. They're
And
seminars.
and
Only a failure if you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson. And I've had I mean, that was a $50 million seminar. So, I'll tell you a funny thing. I did a count on how many businesses I've started in my lifetime so far. And I'm 62, and I've started 27 businesses, and several worth tens of millions of dollars. Most spectacular flaming seminars. Okay. So, we fail our way to success, right? You're like, when you're in this business or any business as an entrepreneur, you're like a shark. You only die if you stop swimming, right? And I got to meet the billionaire owner of Spanx, the women's undergarments, hold all the stuff together, Sarah Blakely, beautiful human being. But I met her at a mastermind, and she told me that her dad used to ask her and her brother once a week, "What have you failed at this week?" And I thought, what a freaking awesome question to ask your kids, right? Anyway. Yeah.
No, that's great. And getting back to that with your school, I just want to dive into there a little bit. When you have a school and raving fans, people are willing to pay to be taught by
Yeah.
someone like you. And what we've also found is unless someone does pay that entry fee, we don't take that education
Right.
seriously enough if you're getting it
Right.
for free. What have you learned from your
Well,
students
same,
in your
same, same,
school?
same.
And
I don't give it away for free because of that dynamic. But I will tell you this: I spent a lot of time following Tony Robbins around the planet. I really love his technology, and so I sent about 30 people to his event, and about 2 people got something out of it. And so it's that whole adage: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, these students, they weren't ready, and so you know, I think, somebody really has to reach a tipping point where they're like, okay, screw it. I don't want to be in the same place a year from now that I am right now, and so they have to, maybe even get some disgust going. They have to get leverage on themselves. And that's when people come to me. But, $97 for a 2-day boot camp is kind of ridiculously reasonable. I mean, just saying, I don't sell anything there at all. I couldn't take your money if I wanted to. But so I focus on adding as much value as I possibly can. It obviously comes back to me. I live a very good life. I've got 1,000 coaching students over 1,000 around the country. And I told you how many units they're buying like crazy. And, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm really loving.
oh, that's great. So 1,000 students, and I know that like you said in the beginning, it doesn't necessarily matter if you are highly educated
Not at all.
or super high intelligent. Of course, it helps to be a smart person, but
It's
that
all about the
hunger.
hunger.
Are
It's
you
about that
able to
burning desire,
really?
which is why if you come to the boot camp, the first hour we're going to spend on goals. We're going to spend an hour doing a goal setting session. And because how the hell do you get anything if you don't know what it is? And how do you get it if you don't know why you want it? So, and by the way, if you can't make my boot camp, I do that goal setting session every year on New Year's Day. And I did it this year, and it's in the rodslinks.com link tree. That's my link tree, rodslinks.com. At the bottom is my goal setting workshop. go do it. Do it with your spouse. If you got a kid that's over 10 years old, have them do it. Here's the thing. People spend more time planning a freaking birthday party than they do designing their lives. This is designing your life. So trust me, it's with music. There's a guide you download. It's really professionally done. You'll love it. You'll be juiced. So, if you come to the boot camp, we'll do it there for sure. And we do a lot of other cool stuff so you actually take action with what you learn. But if you can't make that October 15th, 16th boot camp, then go to Rod's links and just do the goal setting. You should do it a couple times a year, because you've got to, you got to be real clear on what you want, especially in what's coming. Because once it gets ugly and the news make everything look like the sky is falling, you've got to stay focused on what you want so you don't get sucked into that crap. Very, very important.
Now, no, I love that, and I've been watching Tony Robbins for a long time myself. I've been to 3 events, and we all know also, and I had been doing business in real estate since I was 21, but still went to those Tony Robbins events. I'm jumping up and down with thousands and thousands of other people, but how many people actually come off of that seminar and really take what was learned and use that seriously to build their business or their life? Not many, usually. Well, let's wrap this up. They say you have to have 3 of something to make a collection. This is the Collecting Real Estate podcast. So, first question for you: in 5 words or so, what is the most important thing you've learned since collecting real estate?
I'm going to use Tony Robbins' quote, which is live with passion. And here's why. If you love what you do, work is play. If you love what you do and work is play, you never work another day in your life. If you love what you do and work is play, you are passionate. And if you are passionate, you have the ability to influence people. And this business is a team sport, and you have to be able to influence people. So if you can't learn to love real estate, for God's sakes, go do something else. Now, you can learn to love anything if you associate pleasure with it. But if you can't learn to love it, for God's sakes, go do something else. Life is too short.
Very valuable answer. Number 2, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals?
I'm actually personal goals. Okay. Well, we want to get a home, a farm, waterfront, ideally, in the Carolinas or Georgia or Tennessee. We had property under contract, but I waited because of this looming recession, depression. I had it under contract. Luckily, I got my earnest money back, but backed out. But that's one big goal. Just travel more. We've been landlocked so much. We're going to Europe next week for 18 days. Really looking forward to that. Man, am I looking forward to that. So that's pretty much it on the personal front. Yeah.
Cool. Well, enjoy your vacation. Last one. How can we and the listeners assist you? How do we contact you? And feel free to plug anything you choose at this
Rod's
point.
Links has a lot of free stuff, guys. So if you're interested in multifamily, there's free books. There's really good books there. There's all my social channels. I put a lot of video content out there. I'm pretty proud of it. I've got my goal setting workshop at the bottom you can do. I've got my boot camp website there, my podcast. I hope you'll check out my podcast. I mean, I'm pretty proud of it. Like I said, we're at 14 million downloads. It's the largest commercial real estate podcast in the world. And, again, feel free to reach out to me with a question. I respond to every single question. So, but I appreciate you having me on, my friend. Say goodbye to Stephen for me, but thank you for having me.
I certainly will, and we really appreciate you for coming on to the Collecting Real Estate podcast. Rod is one of the monsters in multifamily real estate worldwide, so there's a lot of value in this podcast. And Rod, thanks again for being on the show.
Be well. Take care.